Severe flooding worsens in China. Drivers inside a road tunnel trapped inside amid rising water. Human remains later carried out in sealed foam boxes. Residents blame authorities for making flood conditions worse. That's after they released water from an upstream reservoir with no warning. An insider reveals the real story of what happened inside a Chinese subway, revealing what's been called missed opportunities to save lives. News from Hong Kong's pro-democracy front. 7 men that attacked pro-democracy protesters in 2019 are going to jail. But police are also arresting a media professional and several book publishers. An American photography company, Kodak, bends to Beijing. It offered an apology to China related to the country's Xinjiang region. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Online videos are capturing the horrifying flood in central China. A tunnel there is among the worst hit places. Piles of cars were crammed inside when water poured in, and bodies were later carried out in tightly sealed foam boxes. But just how did the disaster happen?
This is a tunnel, not a river. But here's how the entrance of the tunnel looked like after Zhengzhou city in central China's Henan province flooded on Tuesday. These people were still breathing a few minutes ago. The tunnel has 6 lanes and is about 3 miles long. Reports say floodwater filled this giant underground tube in 5 minutes. Local residents say there are often traffic jams in this miles-long tunnel. What's worse, the floodwater poured in during rush hours. Someone did a simulation of the scenario and concluded that there is no way to survive, theoretically speaking. The casualties must be stunning. Another social media post emphasizes that there was a traffic jam when it flooded. A video shows drivers trying to escape the tunnel, but the toll booth were still stopping every car at the exit, asking them to scan in order to pay the tolls.
里头车全部都闷进去了，车里头都有司机啊，都有人呐，都是一家一家的呀。你说这咋弄啊？你说说。
A missing persons list from Chinese media, The Paper, tells the story of 2 14-year-old boys trapped in the tunnel. The report says they entered the tunnel on their electric bikes. One boy called his classmate, saying his bike was washed away. That was around 5 p.m. Tuesday afternoon. When their classmates got there some 15 minutes later, the water in the entrance of the tunnel already reached their knees, and the currents were too strong for them to get inside. A post says a lot of people were carried out. They were all sealed in white foam boxes, and onlookers were not allowed at the scene. Now the police are blocking the intersection around the entrance of the tunnel and keeping people hundreds of feet away.
肯定是吧？有啥事呗，对吧？大家心里知道，肯定是不想让大家看见的事情。
Zhengzhou residents are demanding to know why authorities failed to warn them of the impending flash flood. Some say authorities made the flood worse by releasing water from an upstream reservoir. At least a dozen drowned to death in a subway system that was submerged by floodwater. Hundreds were trapped in it for hours. Local authorities claim over 30 have died because of the flood, but NTD cannot independently verify the figure due to strict censorship. Chinese authorities so far are attributing the tragedy to nature, but some are questioning the role of human error in it. A look at the timeline may explain why. According to Chinese state media reports, authorities started to release water from the upstream reservoir at 10:30 Tuesday morning, July 20th. But they didn't alert downstream residents until 12 hours later at 10:30 p.m. During those 12 hours, the flood got worse in the city. But authorities kept the subway system running. Traffic was running as usual at 1:40 p.m., and the water started to flood the streets after 2 p.m. After 5 p.m., the city was pretty much submerged. And after 6 p.m., the subway cars were already flooded, with over 500 people trapped in them. Although it took authorities 12 hours to warn people about the flash flood, they were quick to crack down on warnings about the disaster. Late Tuesday night, numerous Chinese media and state agencies posted on social media, debunking what they called rumors about the reservoir. Some netizens claim the dike of the reservoir has been breached and it is releasing a massive amount of water. Authorities ask people not to believe in them and report on whoever is spreading the so-called rumor. But they did not mention that the reservoir is indeed releasing water downstream. An insider explains in a Chinese social media post that authorities' failure to act led to the disaster in the Zhengzhou subway system. In the post, the person said he or she works for the Zhengzhou subway, but didn't give his or her name. The person says leaders in every node of the subway system dared not to make decisions. To avoid taking the responsibility, operation leaders just let the trains run, even though they had already received a red-level flood warning. As a result, many rescue opportunities were wasted, and many trains were stuck in the tunnels. The insider says from when the floodwater submerged the rails till it eventually submerged the evacuation platforms, authorities on the spot had enough time to evacuate the passengers, but they didn't. And regular employees also didn't dare to take responsibilities. The insider says the coordinators on duty should have kept the trains out of the tunnels, but they didn't. The drivers should have opened the doors and let the passengers out, but they didn't. The insider writes with expletives, these people are all killers. He or she adds that everyone in the management system had their own calculations and wanted to assume nothing will go wrong, adding this is a man-made disaster. And a video taken inside the Zhengzhou subway is grabbing people's attention. Many netizens are asking what was happening. Just a warning, some viewers may find the following footage disturbing due to its graphic nature. This video has been circulating online since Tuesday. Several flood victims were seen lying on the ground, showing no signs of life. A person with a medical gown can be spotted, and on the ground there was a medical box and a pair of scissors. The victims had their eyes covered with medical gauze. A top member of the Republican Party says he checked with medical professionals in the U.S. on reviving drowning victims, and they all said that revival measures like CPR do not cause bleeding. Some netizens are questioning if the doctor was taking the cornea from the corpses. Others said it's not confirmed, and the blood could have come from suffocation. Cornea can be transplanted to patients with certain eye diseases. And organ transplantation has been a lucrative business in China for decades. NTD cannot verify these speculations. And while Zhengzhou City flooded, some online videos capture how residents are helping each other survive. The underground floor of a shopping center was flooded, and many people were stuck inside. Residents formed a team and used a rope to drag them out. A man used his own boat and went out to rescue other villagers. The caption in the video says he rescued more than 20 people. Cars are soaked in water, and people inside try to rescue themselves. A man was having trouble keeping himself afloat. Another man close by saw him and quickly swam over to rescue him. The video was taken at the entrance of the city's Xinjiang road tunnel. An urgent call for help. A family in Henan province asked for help before their house was hit by mudslides. They posted a video on Chinese social media, but it was soon blocked. And now some members in the family are missing.
An insider tells the Epoch Times one of his friends has some relatives living in a village some 10 miles west of Zhengzhou City. He said all 9 people of the family were washed away by mudslides, including 4 children. Before this, the family sent out a video on Chinese social media Weibo calling for help, but the video was blocked a few hours later. The insider says that in the village the roads were destroyed, houses collapsed, the cell phone signal was down, and there was a power outage. A China state media also reported on the situation in that same village. A resident there told them her family house collapsed and her family members were buried underneath the house, missing for 48 hours. According to social media posts, the floodwater in a nearby village rose as high as 20 feet over the top of the houses, and most of the residents in the village are old people. By Wednesday, the rain had stopped and many residents could manage to move to safety, but some people are still missing due to a lack of professional rescue equipment. An online video shows a building there collapsing. The caption in the video explains the flood caused a sinkhole close to the building, and that is believed to be why it collapsed. A netizen tweeted, "During this rainstorm, people in the countryside are the most miserable because we can't see what it's like there and we can't hear their voices." People in another city in the same province were experiencing a similar situation.
Weather authorities in Zhengzhou City are saying the heavy rains experienced there are a once-in-a-millennium disaster. But many criticize the announcement as an excuse to divert attention from the deaths that occurred under the authorities' watch. The local meteorological station said the city saw over 20 inches of rainfall from Monday to Tuesday. It happens only once in 1,000 years. Some netizens asked how come the meteorological station could measure the rainfall over the past 1,000 years. And the number from the local meteorological station also conflicts with that from central authorities. According to the China Weather Network, rainfall in Zhengzhou from Monday to Tuesday was around 10 inches. That's half as much as what Zhengzhou authorities reported. And 10 inches of rainfall in 24 hours is actually not unprecedented in China. According to official Chinese records, a city in Henan province saw over 30 inches of rainfall in 6 hours back in August 1975. Coming up, both good news and bad news from Hong Kong. 7 men that attacked pro-democracy protesters in 2019 are going to jail. But Hong Kong police are also arresting a media professional and several book publishers. More on that after the break.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
A Hong Kong court is sentencing 7 men for up to 7 years in prison. It's for their role in a 2019 attack on pro-democracy protesters, reporters, and bystanders at a train station during the height of the protests. Here's more from Hong Kong.
A Hong Kong court sentenced 7 men to prison on Thursday for their role in a 2019 train station attack on pro-democracy protesters. In handing down the sentences, Judge Eddie Yip described the crimes as, quote, mob justice which caused panic among the general public. In July 2019, more than 100 people in white t-shirts beat protesters, reporters, and bystanders at a train station in the northern Yunlong district. Some activists suspected gangs were involved and accused the police of collusion, citing their sluggish response to the attack. Police have denied those claims, placing the blame on other protests around the city for their slow response. On Thursday, the city's district court sentenced 5 men to the maximum 7-year penalty for rioting, as well as wounding with intent or conspiracy to wound with intent. 2 others were given a shorter sentence because they had pled guilty before the trial. These were the first convictions of any of the white-shirted attackers.
Another arrest targeting media professionals in Hong Kong. The newest victim used to be a top executive for a now-closed pro-democracy newspaper, Apple Daily. Here's the latest from Hong Kong.
Police in Hong Kong arrested another top staffer at the now-closed pro-democracy tabloid, Apple Daily, on Wednesday. Local media say its former executive editor-in-chief Lam Meng-chung was taken in by the city's national security police. Lam makes 8 arrests tied to the newspaper, including founder Jimmy Lai. In a statement, police said that they arrested a 51-year-old former newspaper editor on suspicion of, quote, conspiring to collude with foreign countries or foreign forces to endanger national security. Next Digital, which published Apple Daily, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The popular tabloid folded after several hundred police raided its headquarters last month and froze the company's assets and bank accounts. Its last print edition was published 1 week after. Police have said dozens of the paper's articles may have violated the city's Beijing-imposed national security law, the first instance authorities have leveraged the legislation against local media.
Hong Kong police arrested 5 people over children's books. The police say the 5 people published children's books aimed at inciting hatred towards the city's government. Flora Bradley-Watson reports.
5 people in Hong Kong have been arrested on charges of sedition for books they published featuring sheep and wolves. Hong Kong police say the stories are aimed at inciting hatred amongst young people towards the city's government. Those arrested were members of a speech therapists union that produced books for children. They were arrested under a colonial-era law targeting sedition, which had been rarely used before the anti-government protests. First convictions under the sedition law carry a maximum penalty of 2 years in prison. At a media briefing on Thursday, police displayed the confiscated books. One of them is titled Defenders of the Sheep Village and tells the story of wolves wanting to occupy a village and eat the sheep, who in turn use their horns to fight back. Police say the book was connected to the 2019 protests. 2 other books were highlighted as raising concern, including one about 12 sheep taken by wolves to the beasts' village, where they would be cooked. It potentially alludes to the 12 Hong Kong people captured by China in August last year as they tried to flee the city by boat. Thursday's arrests add to fears about the shrinking space for dissent in Hong Kong since Beijing imposed a national security law last year. Security officials have said law enforcement is based on evidence and has nothing to do with an individual's political stance, background, or profession.
American photography company Kodak is the latest to bend the knee to Beijing. On Tuesday, the company offered a sincere apology to China after it posted on Instagram about mass detentions in China's Xinjiang region. NTD's Don Ma has more.
Kodak posted a series of pictures on Instagram last week depicting Uyghurs at various locations in the Xinjiang region. The accompanying captions talk about mass incarcerations happening there. Kodak actually did not directly produce the photos and texts. They're actually originally from French photographer Patrick Wack. He has called Xinjiang a dystopia and has been vocal about mass incarcerations happening there. He's even garnered the attention of Chinese state-run media. After backlash from Chinese media and netizens, Kodak deleted the post and issued 2 separate apologies on Tuesday. On Instagram, the company's apology statement reads, "Mr. Wack's views do not represent those of Kodak. We apologize for any misunderstanding or offense." In a separate apology on Chinese social media WeChat, the company gives an even more wholehearted apology. It reads, "For a long time, Kodak has maintained a good relationship with the Chinese government. We will continue to respect the Chinese government. We will keep ourselves in check and correct ourselves." U.S. media mostly criticized the apology, and Wack was not too happy about it either. He's saying the apology is upsetting many people. Around 1 million Uyghurs are believed to have been arbitrarily detained in Xinjiang. Many have been subject to torture, forced sterilization, forced labor, and possibly forced organ harvesting. A number of countries have labeled abuses happening there as genocide. Kodak is not the only one to apologize to China recently. American athlete and actor John Cena did the same after he referred to Taiwan as a country. And the NBA apologized in 2019 after one of its general managers posted a tweet supporting Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests. Don Ma, NTD News.
Senator Marco Rubio says he considers Cubans to be hostages in their own country and argues lifting the U.S. embargo won't help in the fight for their freedom. He joined Fox's Sean Hannity in Miami last night at the Cuban-American community's rallying point. NTD's Jessica Beatty reports.
Senator Marco Rubio defended Cuban protesters' fight against the communist regime Wednesday on Fox's Hannity. He says Cuba's a failure because socialism and Marxism don't work.
Marxism is about power and nothing to do with prosperity. It's about controlling people. A Marxist system wants to keep people poor because poor people are easier to control. The leaders of Cuba aren't just evil, they're incompetent people. Because in Cuba, you don't get promoted for being smart. You get promoted because you're loyal, because you're compliant, because you give in.
Earlier this week, Rubio said Cubans are not protesting the U.S. embargo. He said they're protesting because they want liberty. A senior researcher from Human Rights Watch says the Cuban regime has brutally repressed protesters.
Over 500 people, including protesters, artists, journalists, and others, have been detained. The whereabouts of many of them are unknown. Many have been beaten. Some have been tortured.
One man is looking for his sister who was arrested during protests, but he can't find her.
I went to a police station with my mother, and they said my sister wasn't there. This is how it has been since Monday, police station after police station.
Cuban actor and playwright Junior Garcia was put under house arrest.
My current situation is that I have 4 officers in front of my door who prevent me from going outside. They told me I cannot even go to work. When I leave to buy cigarettes or food, one of them goes with me.
Senator Rubio told Hannity that the 2 people in the Biden administration who are in charge of Cuba policy want to open everything up. He claims they're sympathizers of the Cuban regime. We reached out to the White House for comment, but haven't heard back yet. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
A senior official says the Biden administration will announce new sanctions today against Cuban officials who suppress protesters. During his campaign, President Biden said he would loosen the U.S. embargo on Cuba and go back to Obama-era policies. But so far, he has done little to change Trump's Cuba policies. And since the protests, the Biden administration said it's rethinking its Cuba policies. A senior UK lawmaker is warning about the security of British citizens' sensitive medical data. That's because a Chinese military-linked company is harvesting genetic data from millions of women around the world. NTD's Joan Robeson has more on this.
Earlier this month, it was reported that Chinese company BGI has been using prenatal tests to harvest data on the genomics of millions of women around the world. Senior Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat says the UK should be concerned over its implications for privacy.
I'm always concerned when data leaves the United Kingdom that it should be treated with the respect and privacy that we would expect here at home. And the concern that this raises is that it may not be so.
Tugendhat says BGI's links with the Chinese military is raising additional concerns that Beijing may use the data to gain advantage over other countries.
The connections between Chinese genomics firms and the Chinese military are, do not align with what we would normally expect in the United Kingdom or indeed many other countries of the kind of collaboration we would expect to see. We expect science collaboration to be on the basis of open scientific endeavour. We don't expect it to be in terms of narrow national advantage, and that's what raises concerns here as well.
Tugendhat chairs Parliament's Foreign Affairs Select Committee and leads the China Research Group, a group of Conservative MPs which looks to rebalance the strategic relationship with China. He is one of 9 British lawmakers who have been sanctioned by the Chinese regime for highlighting alleged human rights abuses against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. But before you go, we have a special report coming up this Friday. In it, we look at whether Chinese stocks are safe for U.S. investors. Are Chinese stocks safe for U.S. investors? Just this month, one Chinese company sent many of them on a roller coaster ride. China's version of Uber, called Didi, came in the U.S. to sell its stock shares.
It's expected to be the biggest stock market debut of the year.
But in just 48 hours, Beijing dropped its hammer on the company.
And Chinese ride-hailing app Didi shares fell 6% today after the Chinese regime said it launched an investigation into it.
At one of its lowest points, Didi shares plunged over 30%. But why is Beijing going after its biggest rideshare giant? What other companies are on the regime's radar? In this episode, we dive into Beijing's tug-of-war with its tech giants. Be sure to check it out on Epoch TV this Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. China in Focus is partnering with the platform. That's where you can watch our exclusive content every Friday night. To subscribe, click epochtv.com/China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.